We're here at the American Freedom Alliance event on the red-green axis. What will you be discussing here before this audience?
Well, what I think we want to clarify, so we've got Robert Spencer, who is the expert on Islam, Frank Gaffney, who's got a huge experience dating right back to the Cold War. He's dealt with the Soviets, he's dealt with the Iranians, he's dealt with the globalist types, and I'm more focusing on the red side, the communist side. So what we're trying to get across is America is under assault right now from all of those forces. And, there used to be people in the old days who would say, oh, the Muslims would never work with the communists, the Muslims would never work with atheistic communists. Well, they happily do. Just like people would say the Shia would never work with the Sunni. Well, they do, Shia Iran is sponsoring Sunni Hamas in fighting Israel. So we want to give people a background in how this came about, how dangerous it is, and how to spot it, how to figure out what's happening, because we're in a pre-revolutionary situation here in America.
And when you say revolutionary, from the communists?
Both communists and Islamists. You see we've seen all those Hamas rallies that occurred, and we've seen assassinations. We've seen the riots here in Los Angeles, which were fomented by a pro-Chinese communist group called the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, but Islamic forces also joined in. We've seen the big campaign right now in Mamdani in New York, running for mayor of New York, and that's a classic thing. He's a member of Democratic Socialist America, which is a communist organization. All the communist groups are backing him, but so is CAIR, so are the Soros organizations, so have all the Islamic organizations. So he is he is the epitome of the red-green axis. That's him. But there's another one running in Minnesota as well. Omar Fateh doing the same thing in Minnesota. We're going to see much more of this, but we're also going to see much more violence as well, I believe.
Why have the Marxists teamed up with the Islamists at this stage?
Well, because Carlos the Jackal, the famous Venezuelan terrorist who's still in jail, I believe, from the 80s, said only an alliance of Islam and communism and Marxism-Leninism could bring down America. Specifically said that, and they're playing that out. But the communists and the Islamists have been working together since the 1920s. In the Soviet Union, when the Soviets set up, they persecuted Jews, they persecuted Christians, but they didn't persecute the Muslims because the Muslims were less controllable. They were in those wild, less controlled areas out in Central Asia. So instead of shutting down the mosques, they took over the mosques and created Soviet Islam. And that led to later on to the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, the Palestine Liberation Organization, Hamas and Al-Qaeda. All of these groups are amalgams of communism and Islam.
Who is funding these protests that we see in the streets of America today?
Well, you are. You pay taxes, don't you?
Well, not me personally. You mean the American taxpayer?
The American taxpayer. Look, there's a combination of factors. People say, well, it's got to be the Qataris, it's got to be the Chinese. You don't need that. All these groups have city money. They have county money. They have federal money. They have foundation money. They have Soros money. They have union money. They have the Islamic groups, they've got zakat money. They have no shortage of money. They don't need foreign funding. I'm sure there is a little bit there, but most of this is done. Like one of the main groups involved in the LA riots has got something like $40 million in city money over the last 5 years. They got all the money they want.
And it's just been revealed that the USAID monies have gone to the extent of up to $900 million to undermine the government of Israel.
Look, absolutely. The taxpayer funds the revolution. And, they've been trying to undermine Bibi Netanyahu's government. Biden was trying to do it. They're using USAID to do it. This is a long-term program, USAID was set up to counter communism. Well, now it's out there promoting it, and Islamism as well. And I believe there's a lot of USAID money went into the so-called Arab Spring back in, under Obama a few years back.
Right. What does USAID stand for?
U.S.
Agency?
Yeah, Agent for International Development. U.S. Agency for International Development.
So in a way it's an oxymoron, because the money's really going not towards aid, but...
No, it's going to revolution. I'm glad that Trump has really taken a hammer to them. I'm glad that Doge got stuck into them. There are some certain good things that USAID has done, but it's like 10%. Most of it is promoting Marxism and revolution.
What are these other gents on the panel bringing to the party?
Look, Robert Spencer is one of the world's experts on Islam, especially the political elements of it, how it infiltrates the international networks, their goals, etc. He is an expert, written many books about it, regarded as a worldwide authority on the subject. Frank Gaffney has been involved in the US defense establishment since the Reagan era. He was a top-ranking Defense Department official under Reagan, generally regarded as one of those who helped to get this country a missile defense against the Soviet Union. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be here. But he's very much involved in the Committee for the Present Danger China. He's involved in all sorts of initiatives to expose Islam in this country, etc. So he is a preeminent expert on the subject.
What's the difference between RAIR, which and CAIR, CAIR, which is the pronunciation, but it's also one of those oxymorons, because it's pronounced CAIR. They pronounce it CAIR, but it's also an inversion.
Yeah, well, CAIR is the Council on American Islamic Relations, and which is it proposes as a civil rights group, but it's really the Muslim Brotherhood's, Hamas's main front group in America, and it also is heavily communist infiltrated. So it's always been like Nihad Awad, the founder of CAIR, was a member of Soviet fronts before he founded CAIR. He was involved with the General Union of Palestinian Students, which was affiliated to the World Federation of Democratic Youth, the old Soviet front. It was only when the Soviet money dried up that he turned his attention to promoting Hamas causes. And he's an open Hamas supporter. So RAIR is an organization exposing the red-green axis in America around the world, and CAIR is the leading exponent of the red-green axis in this country.
Senator Ted Cruz has introduced legislation to ban the CAIR as an extension of Muslim Brotherhood terrorist organization. Do you think that ought to pass?
It should. Well, whether it will or not, I don't know, but absolutely it should. Look, we didn't allow, in World War II, we didn't allow Nazi organizations to operate in this country. In Britain, they shut down the British Union of Fascists during World War II. You don't have an enemy operation on your soil when you're fighting these people at an international level. This is a Trojan horse. This is an enemy operation on our soil, and absolutely, this is not about freedom of speech. This is an enemy organization. The Constitution does not protect enemy organizations on our soil.
To what extent do you feel that they've influenced the Democrat Party?
Well, they've influenced the Republican Party too, to some degree, but absolutely the Democrat Party. Virtually all of the leading Democrat senators have had CAIR interns working in their offices, holding high positions. They, the Nancy Pelosi and Chris Murphy that set up the Muslim Democratic Council a few years ago to coordinate with Nihad Awad to coordinate efforts between the Democrats and CAIR. Several of the Democratic senators, like Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, Chris Murphy of Connecticut, and several others, work extensively with CAIR and promote legislation that CAIR pushes. So they are transmission belts from CAIR, which is a transmission belt from Hamas, into the US Senate. So absolutely they cooperate at the very highest levels, and they promote CAIR's policy in the US Senate, as is also done in Congress.
Which you think is nefarious?
Well, absolutely. You know, when these guys are getting up promoting certain legislation, like fighting President Trump's bill on unvetted ban on unvetted immigrants from Islamic countries, they were in there opposing that. They didn't mention that they were having meetings with CAIR before that, who was urging them to do that, and they agreed to do it on behalf of CAIR, which is a front for Hamas.